My name is Claire Donovan, and I thought I married a man who loved me. I was wrong. I married a man who studied me. A man who watched the way I signed documents, who memorized my passwords when I wasn't looking, who knew the exact day my inheritance would hit the trust account I didn't even remember setting up when I was 21. We were married for 3 years. 3 years of breakfast in bed, love notes on my windshield, couples therapy podcasts during road trips. 3 years of carefully constructed romance, the kind you brag about to your friends and post online with the caption, "He's everything." His name was Ethan Shaw. He was charming, driven, and devastatingly good at pretending. I was 29 when everything unraveled. It started with a call from my bank. "Miss Donovan, we're confirming your request to transfer $150,000 to an offshore account ending in 9013. I didn't request anything, I said, my blood turning to ice. Another call came that night, this time from my credit card company. 3 maxed out cards, an apartment lease in Dubai, my name on a business loan I never signed. I ran to Ethan in tears. He held me, kissed my forehead, told me it was probably a phishing scam. But the next morning he was gone. So was his phone, his laptop, his clothes. So was our joint account. What wasn't gone? The wedding ring still on my finger. And a mountain of debt in my name. My first instinct was denial, that maybe this was all a mistake, that Ethan would walk through the door and say something that would make it all make sense. But then I found it. A folder on our shared drive labeled backup plan, inside, a scanned copy of my birth certificate, my social security number, my digital signature, notes about Claire's trust maturity date. He'd been planning it. From day one. And I'd handed him the keys to everything. But here's the thing Ethan never understood. You can steal someone's identity. You can steal their money. But you can't steal their fire. He took what he thought I wouldn't fight for. So I made a decision. If Ethan Shaw wanted to disappear with everything I had, then I'd take everything he built and burn him with it. The morning after Ethan vanished, I sat on the floor of my living room with a cup of cold coffee and a fire raging in my chest. The man I loved had turned out to be a ghost, and I didn't even know where to begin looking for him. So I started small. I opened my laptop and typed in his name, Ethan Shaw. The first 10 search results, flawless, LinkedIn, glowing testimonials, old interviews from tech panels, founder of Ventrox Systems, a cloud security company making waves in West Coast finance, but something didn't add up. Why? I tried his name through public records. That's when the cracks began to show. There was no Ethan Shaw born in the United States in 1987 with a verifiable SSN, so no high school records, no real university transcript. The man didn't legally exist before 2014. And we met in 2017. He wasn't just lying about what he did. He'd lied about who he was. But buried in an old business license for Ventrox, I found a name listed under silent founders, Nicolette Ashford. I didn't recognize it, but I found her on LinkedIn. Former CMO of Ventrox Systems. Current location, New York. I sent a message. Simple. Honest. You don't know me, but I think we were both screwed by the same man. My name is Claire Donovan, and I was married to Ethan Shaw. She replied within an hour. Meet me, 10 a.m. tomorrow, Cafe Leora, Midtown. Don't be late. The next day, I found her sitting in a corner booth, already nursing a cappuccino. She was sharp, tailored navy blazer, tightly coiled curls, no nonsense in her expression. "You must be Claire," she said without looking up. "Yeah," I whispered. She set down her cup. "He ruined you too?" I nodded, and something between us clicked. Not friendship, not yet, but recognition, shared war trauma. Nicolette had met Ethan, who then called himself Lucas Ryan, 6 years earlier when they co-founded Ventrox. She brought the clients. He brought the fake smile and back-end knowledge. He stole my contacts, my pitch deck, and pushed me out once the seed money landed, she said. Then scrubbed my name from everything but the licensing. I stared. Why didn't you go after him? I did. NDA, arbitration, and he buried the rest, until you showed up. What do you want? I asked her. She gave a slow, deliberate smile. To watch him fall. She leaned closer. If he stole your name, your credit, your identity, that's a federal crime. But if we do this smart, if we go inside Ventrox, we don't just expose him. We take him. And suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. I never thought I'd fake my way into a job interview at a tech company I technically co-owned, at least on paper. But that's what happened. Nicolette had done her part. She pulled strings with the contacts still working inside Ventrox systems. They were hiring for a temporary compliance analyst, the kind of low-visibility position no one cared much about, just enough access to poke around, without setting off alarms. My resume was crafted under a new alias, Claire Monroe. Same skills, same background, just scrubbed of anything Ethan could trace. Are you sure you're ready for this? Nicolette asked me before I walked in. I married a fraud, I said. Now I'm stepping into his castle. The lobby was all steel and glass, cold, polished, fake. Just like him. The receptionist smiled too wide. Welcome to Ventrox, you're here for the 10 a.m.? I nodded, hands clammy but smile steady. Minutes later, I was ushered into a sleek conference room where a thin man with wire-frame glasses and a tablet waited. Claire Monroe, he asked. Yes. Let's get started. The interview was mechanical. Bullet points, compliance laws, cyber policy. Nothing I couldn't handle. I had once helped Ethan study for his own fake credentials, remember? But the real test came when he asked, "What made you apply here?" I looked him dead in the eye. Because I know how fraud works. He blinked, unsure if I was joking. I smiled smooth. Kidding. Sort of. By noon, I had the job. Temporary. Part-time. No benefits. No spotlight. Perfect. Nicolette was waiting outside in a parked SUV with tinted windows. You're in? She asked. I nodded, holding up my badge. Now what? She handed me a burner phone. Now we gather everything. We spent the next 2 weeks like operatives. Every day I sat quietly in the far cubicles accessing compliance reports, scanning internal memos, downloading files Ethan thought no one would ever look at again, shell companies, off-the-books consulting fees, dummy invoices tied to real money. He was laundering money under my name and pocketing profits offshore under his. It wasn't just theft, it was a system. Worse, it was thriving. Nicolette and I mapped it all on a digital corkboard, payments, fake vendors, internal staff he'd bought off. One day, while reviewing an internal expense log, I saw a familiar code. CR Consulting monthly transfer, $8,750. My initials. My fake company. He was still using my identity. Right under their noses. I slammed my laptop shut. This isn't about payback anymore, I told Nicolette. This is war. She nodded. Then it's time to go after his generals. Inside Ventrox systems, I was invisible. No one looked twice at the temp in compliance. No one questioned the quiet woman eating lunch alone or reviewing dusty audit logs from 2 fiscal years ago. But that's exactly how I found them, the cracks in Ethan's empire. Each day I documented everything, fake vendors, suspicious payments, and silent boardroom edits. Nicolette created secure backups on an encrypted drive, logging every digital breadcrumb. We weren't just building a case, we were building leverage. But to take Ethan down from the inside, we needed someone close to him. Someone who knew his daily moves. That's when we found Jordan Ellis. He was Ethan's head of operations, young, ambitious, always in his tailored vest and pristine loafers. More importantly, he'd been there since the beginning of Ventrox's meteoric rise. And unlike Ethan, Jordan had a traceable history. Why him? I asked Nicolette. She pulled up an old email chain from her time as co-founder. Because I know guilt when I see it, she said. He was nervous even back then. Loyal, yes, but not blind. Getting to Jordan took planning. I started leaving sticky notes around the compliance room. Harmless at first reminders, jokes, small talk bait. Then one morning I wrote, "Funny how ghost companies leave real invoices, huh?" That afternoon, Jordan walked into the file room while I was pretending to fix the copier. "You wrote that note?" he asked. I didn't answer. "I've seen your work. Quiet but precise. You're not just some random hire." I stared at him. "Neither are you." His eyes flickered. He didn't deny it. So I gave him an envelope. Inside, 3 redacted printouts of vendor payments, his signature on the approval line. "This doesn't leave this room," I told him. "But I know what Ethan's doing, and I know you're tired of cleaning up his messes." He looked pale. "If you go public, I lose everything." I leaned in. "You think you still have something to lose?" He didn't respond, but he didn't walk away either. The next morning, a flash drive showed up in my inbox tucked between budget reports. No name, no note, just data. Employee payoffs. Hidden ownership links. Ethan's private travel logs including flights to Dubai, Zurich, and Singapore. All within the same week my accounts were drained. We had what we needed to bury him. But something else came with it. A folder labeled Claire_D_originaldocs.pdf, my real identity. Restored. "He kept backups," Nicolette whispered. "He never deletes anything. He keeps trophies." My stomach turned. He wasn't just erasing me. He was collecting me. The flash drive Jordan left me was everything. Emails, invoices, internal memos, copies of Ethan's burner accounts, all traced to my name. CR Consulting, Donovan Logistics, even a life insurance policy he'd taken out in my name while we were married. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was premeditation. "This is it," Nicolette said, staring at the screen. "We take this to a lawyer, to the right lawyer, and we freeze everything he owns." "Everything he stole," I corrected. Nicolette set up a meeting with Layla Graham, a white-collar crime attorney with a reputation for devouring corporate fraud cases like breakfast cereal. She reviewed our folder in silence. Then she leaned back in her chair and said, "This is clean. Too clean. He's been doing this for years, hasn't he?" I nodded. "Can we get him?" "We can get the money, freeze assets, file identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy. Maybe even RICO if he tied enough people into it. But once he knows you're coming, he'll vanish." She looked me in the eye. "If you want to trigger the trap, you only get one shot." That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling in my tiny sublet apartment and thought about all the places Ethan could disappear to. Countries with no extradition, false identities, new wives, new lies. And then I thought of my mother. She died 2 years before the wedding. Ethan had held my hand at the funeral, wiping my tears, whispering promises to protect me. Now I realized. He was already taking inventory. He knew what I'd inherit, knew who wouldn't be around to warn me. He didn't marry me for love. He married me for logistics. The next morning, I met Nicolette and Layla in a narrow office near the courthouse. Layla filed the paperwork. Within an hour, a federal judge approved a freeze order on Ventrox's primary accounts, a warrant to search for stolen digital assets under my name, a temporary injunction against Ethan from transferring any assets until further review. "I give it 48 hours before he feels the net," Layla said. "Maybe less." But we didn't have to wait long. That night at 3:12 a.m., I got an email. From a burner address. Subject: "You shouldn't have done that." Body: "You think you won, Claire? You think you're smarter than me? This isn't over, I stared at the screen. My heart didn't race. I didn't cry. Instead, I smiled. He was watching. And he was scared. I thought Ethan would run. Instead, he retaliated. 2 nights after the freeze order hit his accounts, I came home to find my door lock broken and my apartment turned inside out. Drawers yanked out, closet ripped open, laptop missing, not stolen, wiped. My burner phone still sat on the counter untouched, as if to say, "I want you to know I was here." I backed out slowly, heart pounding, and called Nicolette. "Leave. Now," she said. I didn't argue. Within an hour, I was sleeping on her couch with a baseball bat tucked beside me. Lucia, her dog, curled at my feet like a quiet guard. "This is how he works," Nicolette whispered. "When he loses control, he goes physical, threats, psychological games. Why not just run? Because running means he lost, and Ethan doesn't lose. He punishes." The next morning, Layla confirmed what we feared. Ethan had lawyered up. And not just any lawyer. Simon Croft, a corporate fixer with a history of burying whistleblowers in paperwork until they drowned. "That email he sent you?" Layla asked. "It's evidence, but he's smart enough to deny it." "Can we prove he broke in?" She shook her head. "No cameras, no fingerprints. He's too careful." But not careful enough. Because while he was busy sending threats, he made a mistake. He tried to move money. $10,000 from a dormant account, the one listed under CR Consulting, the same account now monitored by the feds. Within hours, a digital alert was triggered. The FBI called Layla. "We'd like to talk to your client, privately." That afternoon, I sat in a small government office, hands shaking as I handed over everything. The emails, the drive, the flashback logs from the day of the break-in, even Jordan's files. "This is enough to open a preliminary investigation," one agent said, "but we'll need more to make charges stick." "What do you need?" "Access, someone close." That night, Nicolette looked at me across her kitchen table. "You've already been inside. You've already built the paper trail. What if you went back not as Claire Monroe, but as Claire Donovan?" I stared at her. "You want me to go back as myself? If we can make Ethan believe you're dropping the case, playing his game, we can draw him out, get him comfortable. Then we hit him where it hurts." I didn't answer right away. But something had shifted in me. The woman who once cried over missing laptops and broken hearts. She was gone. Now, there was only fire. "If I go back," I said, "I'm not just bringing down his company. I'm going to end him." I walked back into Ventrox Systems not as Claire Monroe, the invisible analyst, but as Claire Donovan, the wife he betrayed, the name he stole, and the threat he never saw coming. This time, people noticed. The receptionist glanced up and froze. Jordan dropped his coffee when he saw me in the hallway. A few whispered, some stared. But one person wasn't surprised. Ethan. He walked into the conference room like a wolf dressed in velvet. "Claire," he said as if we were meeting for brunch. "Still using my last name, I see," I replied. He smiled, not warm, calculating. "I heard you've been curious, digging, poking around where you shouldn't." "Funny," I said. "I was about to say the same to you." He motioned for me to sit. "Let's talk. Somewhere private." I met him that evening at a rooftop restaurant downtown, the kind of place where everything sparkled and secrets died quietly. He wore the same cologne he did on our honeymoon. He ordered my favorite wine. He smiled like nothing had changed. "You didn't have to do this," he said as the waiter left. "All you had to do was move on." I sipped slowly. "You stole from me, framed me, vanished. Why would I move on when I could watch you fall?" He tilted his head. "I didn't vanish, I evolved, and I took what you let me have." That line lit a fire behind my ribs. But I stayed calm. "You know what I realized, Ethan," I said, leaning in. "You didn't just steal money, you stole my name. You branded your empire on my existence. But here's the thing about names. They echo." He didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his blazer and slid a small envelope across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "An offer." Inside was a contract, a payout of $500,000, a non-disclosure agreement, a clause that erased any claim I had to Ventrox or its history. "Sign this," he said smoothly, "and everything goes away. You walk clean. No court, no war." He thought I'd fold. Thought I'd be scared. But I looked him in the eye and said, "Do you remember what I said the night you proposed?" He blinked. I smiled. "I said I don't believe in fairy tales." I stood up, slid the envelope back across the table. I came here to hear your final offer, and you just made it. His jaw clenched. I leaned close. Now watch what I do with it. The next morning, we pulled the trigger. Nicolette uploaded the leak. Every fake invoice, every money trail, every vendor tied to Ethan's digital laundering scheme, including the Dubai accounts, the shell corporations, and his pattern of identity theft across 4 states. It wasn't just about me anymore. Ethan had used other women he'd dated briefly, borrowed information from, then vanished. Their names were all over silent accounts and asset registrations, victims who had no idea they were legally owning companies in Belize or accounts in Switzerland. We sent the data to 3 targets. The press, a tech investigative blog called Silicon Truth. The FBI via encrypted transfer from Layla. The Ventrox board of directors anonymously. The fuse had been lit, and it burned fast. By noon, the story was live. Founder of Ventrox Systems tied to multinational fraud scheme. Anonymous leak alleges massive identity theft network hidden in plain sight. Comments flooded in. Stocks dropped 18% within hours. A scheduled investor webinar was cancelled. Employees began whispering, deleting messages, panicking. And Ethan? He didn't show up to work. But he didn't run either. Instead, he called me. Block number, same quiet venom in his voice. You made your point, Claire, but you forgot something. What? I don't go down alone. Click. Seconds later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo. Jordan, tied to a chair, bruised, eyes swollen, next to a whiteboard filled with redacted names, including mine. My stomach dropped. Nicolette called at the same time. Turn on your TV. A breaking news report flashed on screen. FBI investigates anonymous leak, internal source at Ventrox suspected. They think Jordan did it, she whispered. No, I said. Ethan made it look that way. We had planned for many outcomes. But not this. I rushed to the address embedded in the photo's metadata, a half-empty warehouse near the docks. Nicolette called the police from her end. When I arrived, Jordan was barely conscious, but he was alive. He'd been beaten and left with one message pinned to his shirt: turn her in, or next time, it's you. He looked at me through swollen eyes. I didn't say a word. I know, I whispered. But he just made his last mistake. Ethan thought this was still a game. He forgot who I'd become. The boardroom at Ventrox Systems had 12 leather chairs and only one voice that ever mattered, Ethan's. But not today. Today, they heard mine. I walked in with Layla at my side, a rolling cart of documents and a USB drive containing every piece of evidence we had. The board members looked tense, some disheveled. One was already on the phone with legal. I assume you've all seen the news, I began, steady as stone. One man cleared his throat. We've been advised not to speak until our attorneys, Don't worry, I cut in. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to inform. I plugged the drive into the wall monitor. Slides loaded one by one. Fake vendor lists, Ethan's offshore wire logs, the anonymous NDA scanned surveillance footage of Jordan's rescue. They didn't blink until I opened the final file. Claire_D_original_docs.pdf. My name is Claire Donovan, I said slowly. Ethan Shaw married me, stole my identity, laundered money through companies registered in my name. While I was sleeping beside him, he was using me as a front for millions in corporate fraud. Layla stepped in. Under federal law, Claire is a material victim of identity theft and asset misappropriation. If this board continues to shelter Mr. Shaw, every one of you becomes complicit. Another board member, a woman with salt gray hair, leaned forward. How did we not see this? Because you didn't want to, I said. He was the golden boy. He made you money. He sold you a dream. I paused. But I lived the nightmare. The fallout was immediate. The board suspended Ethan pending investigation. PR scrambled. A class action lawsuit was prepared within days by victims of his past cons. Every silent partner with a fake account began coming forward. But I wasn't done. I wanted the world to hear it from me. Nicolette arranged a live stream. No media spin. Just me, seated in front of a camera in a plain black blouse, no makeup, no script. I was married to a man who turned my life into a business plan, I said. He wore love like a disguise, trust like a costume. He thought I'd stay quiet, ashamed. But here I am, speaking, loudly. The video hit 2.1 million views in 2 days. I received thousands of messages, from women, from whistleblowers, from people who had been used and discarded but never listened to. And then one message stopped me cold. From e.shaw@redmail.org, subject, checkmate, you got your moment, let's see how long it lasts. Eeeh. I smiled. Let him watch. Because I wasn't done yet. For a moment it felt like I had won. Ventrox was under investigation, Ethan's empire was crumbling, my name was being cleared, people were listening. But Ethan had one more card to play. And he'd buried it deep. Nicolette called me at midnight. I was combing through Ethan's old travel data again, she said, voice sharp with urgency. You remember that layover in Singapore he took last year? Yeah, during the time he disappeared for 3 days. There's a financial tech bank there called OronSafe built for digital investments in crypto, NFTs, untraceable wallets. I just found a transfer he made 2 days after you got the asset freeze. My pulse quickened. He moved money after the order. He found a backdoor, a private investment vehicle under a company called Lionroot Ventures. Guess whose name is on the board? Don't tell me. She didn't have to. It was me, again. He'd used my identity to mask a $3.2 million investment in high-risk startup equity, locked behind 2-factor keys and offshore encryption, untouched, undetected, until now. We met with Layla the next morning. This could change everything, she said. It proves intent. He's not just hiding assets, he's actively laundering them through you. But how do we get access? I asked. You said you helped him build his password system, right? Nicolette asked. Yes, his old recovery questions, backup emails. I remember most of it. Then we go in the back door, she grinned. We sat down and began the process. Question 1, mother's maiden name. Answer, Wilcox. Question 2, first vacation city. Answer, Lisbon. Question 3, your favorite color. I paused. He always said, midnight blue, I whispered. Access granted. And there it was. $3.2 million. Hidden behind my name, in a wallet labeled exit_echo. Layla stared. We present this to the feds now. This is the nail in the coffin. But before we could act, my laptop flickered. Disconnected. The screen went black. Then a single message appeared. Nice try, Claire, but this vault dies with me. Moments later, Nicolette's phone rang. The Singapore account just vanished, she said. Funds moved, erased, the shell collapsed. Ethan had been watching everything, and now he was making his final move. But what he didn't know? I had printed screenshots. I had recorded the login session, and I had sent copies to Layla, the FBI, and a local reporter. 10 minutes before we logged in, he was planning to vanish again. Ethan had booked a one-way flight to the Maldives under the alias Eric Langston. First class, no luggage. Departure, 9:45 a.m. the next morning. We found out through an airline leak one of Nicolette's contacts flagged the reservation after recognizing the ID photo. Ethan had changed just enough to slip past suspicion, but not enough to escape me. I stood at gate 17 with a mic clipped to my collar and a small GoPro hidden in my jacket. Nicolette waited a few feet behind, pretending to scroll her phone. Layla was off-site with the federal agents, ready to move the second I gave the signal. As the crowd thickened, I spotted him. Ethan. Same smirk, same confidence, same tailored suit. He walked toward the boarding zone, completely unaware, until I stepped in front of him. Going somewhere? He froze mid-stride. Claire, he said, voice flat. Eric, actually, I said, flashing the boarding pass I'd taken from the leak. You forgot to say goodbye. Move, he hissed. Why? Afraid of what people might see. I pulled out my phone, already streaming live on social media. Thousands of people were watching. This is the man who stole my name, my money, my future. Ethan Shaw or Eric Langston, depending on the day. Turn that off, he growled. I don't think I will. Security started to notice. A few travelers were filming. One even recognized him. You know, I said calmly, the authorities are very interested in that $3.2 million you vanished from Singapore, especially since I sent them a full walkthrough of the account. Before you erased it. His face finally cracked. You won't win this, he muttered. I already did, I whispered. That's when the agents closed in. 2 in suits, 1 in plain clothes. Ethan Shaw, you are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and international money laundering, the lead officer said. You have the right to remain silent. The rest faded under the roar of my heartbeat. Ethan didn't fight. He didn't plead. He just looked at me. You think you're clean, he said softly as they cuffed him. You played dirty too. I smiled. No, Ethan. I played smart. That night, the clip went viral. 10 million views in under 24 hours. I was no longer just the woman he betrayed. I was the woman who exposed him. 6 months later, the trial was over. Ethan pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. His lawyers tried to spin it, said he was a product of survival instincts, abandonment trauma, the pressure of success. But the judge didn't flinch. He gave him 18 years in federal prison, no early parole, no sealed records. Justice didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like quiet. Like waking up and not checking the locks 3 times. Like walking into a bank with my ID and no one raising an eyebrow. Like breathing. I didn't take back Ventrox. That place was poisoned. But I did create something new. With Nicolette, Jordan, and 2 other former victims of Ethan's schemes, we launched a nonprofit, Reclaim Plus. We help victims of financial and digital abuse, especially women, restore their names, their records, their power. We provide lawyers, digital protection, therapy referrals, career coaches. Why? Because fraud doesn't just steal money, it steals identity. I know that better than anyone. The last message Ethan sent me came from prison. A typed letter, generic tone, no apology, just a single line. You were never meant to fight like this. I burned it. Because I was never meant to stay silent either. One day, after a speaking event in DC, a young woman approached me. Her hands shook as she introduced herself. He made me sign papers. I didn't know what they meant. I was scared to say anything. I took her hand. You're not alone, I said. You're not the first, and you will recover. That's what no one tells you about rebuilding. It doesn't happen in one day, or one courtroom. It happens when you remember who you are. When you stop hiding behind shame. When you say your name out loud and it feels like yours again. My name is Claire Donovan. He took everything from me. So I took everything back.